Hey everyone, Deathgrip here. Welcome back to the Deathgrip Builds channel. First off, thank you guys so much for all your support on my very first video. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope I can continue to grow my content and get better and better as I go, so that way I can continue to put out awesome videos for you guys. So today we're back, and we're going to be building what I'm calling the future Deco themed PC, and it's a great showcase of how inspiration can come from even the smallest things. And the main inspiration for this one that kind of got the cogs turning and wound up resulting in this build here is actually the RAM from Corsair. It's the Dominator Titanium DDR5 RAM. I've seen this RAM before, but I mainly stayed away from it just because it's quite expensive. But there was a short that I'd seen on YouTube sometime a couple months ago, and it reminded me of the old Art Deco style with very clean lines and a solid color background. And I knew that this was an idea that I wanted to put into an actual full theme. So I wanted to stick with the white color scheme because I really think that pops. And I was looking for a way to make it a more modern aesthetic because Art Deco usually is brass accents with really dark background colors. And so for a modern gaming PC, I wanted it to really pop. And that's why I decided to do brass accents with white as the background. And that's the overall inspiration for this build. Now I'll quickly go through the parts and the reason why I picked them, and then we'll get to actually building. So I promise this ain't going to be a long yap session like the first one was. But while I was looking for a case for this build, and I originally thought that I was going to be going with an Alienware Area 51 case, like one of the old ones, and I was going to just take it apart, paint it white, and then paint the little grill that you see on the side a goldish color, and then I would have to figure out how to do some kind of glass panel or something like that in there. But that quickly went out the window when I saw that people were trying to charge $400 to $500 for a 10-plus-year-old PC, and that was just it for me on that idea. So I kind of put this on the back burner until I saw this case pop up on Amazon, and it's the Dark Flash LM280. And I've seen this kind of curved glass aesthetic before, but usually it is this corner right here that is what is curved. I've never seen them do it like from the bottom to top like this one. And so I knew that was the case for me for this build, as it was definitely unique, and I've not really seen hardly any people build in it. Then when it came to graphics card, I knew that there was only one type of card that would actually fit this aesthetic, and that is a Sapphire Nitro 7000 series card. The 7800 XT, the 7900 XT, and the 7900 XTX all have the same general style, but I was hunting after a 7900 XTX because I really wanted this to be a high-end build to basically pair with the kind of high-end aesthetics that I was going for. And I ended up finding a good deal on the 7900 XTX after probably a month of searching, and I knew after that it was on. And so after that, I was looking for an AIO to go with it, and I ended up picking this Thermalright Grand Vision 240mm AIO, mainly because the screen on it also has rounded corners. My wife actually has the 360mm version in her build, and I've always really liked the way that that looks, and it's a really premium looking cooler. As far as the motherboard, I was originally going to go with the MSI Project Zero, but it's really hard to find those these days for a good price because they're the only B650 back connect motherboard that they make. So I ended up grabbing the next best thing, which is this B650M Aorus Elite AX Ice motherboard from Gigabyte. And then I know I had to pair a CPU worthy of this graphics card, and that's why we ended up picking up the Ryzen 7 9800X3D, the GOAT of gaming CPUs right now. And then to round it out, I was able to pick up a great deal on an unopened 1000 watt Rosewell power supply. And I also grabbed a 2TB M.2 from Kleb. It's the Kras C910. It's a great deal on Amazon. I'd grab that if I were you, if you're looking for a 2TB drive. And then when it comes to fans, I ended up picking these ones from John's Bow, and they have like all-in-one fans is what they're calling them. And basically it makes for a really clean aesthetic. The original fans that came in this case had that kind of same rounded corner look to it, but the RGB strips on them were like broken segmented, and it wasn't that clean line aesthetic that I was looking for. And so I ended up stumbling upon these ones from John's Bow and swapping them out for those. That's all the parts, and we'll get started on the build. I picked up this brass strip for about $10 off of Amazon, and it was a great option because it already came with pre-applied adhesive on the back of the strip. So I was able to just stick it to the case without having to do anything special aside from just bending it to the shape of the case. And it just is a good example of how you can use a cheap option to elevate the look of your build a lot without having to break the bank. Something I would definitely recommend when it comes to this strip as well, if you're going to try and replicate the build, is be careful when you're handling it, because the edges are kind of sharp, just the outside edges, not even like the end where you would cut the piece, but just the edges themselves. I was kind of messing around with it and gripping it too strongly on the sides and pulled, and it slid through my finger and cut my finger a little bit. So make sure you're being careful with these, or handle them with gloves, one of the two. But as far as cutting the material, I was using this old pair of bonsai shears that I had laying around, and while it definitely got the job done, I would totally recommend getting a pair of metal like tin snips if you're going to be trying to replicate this build. It's going to cut a lot smoother, and you're not going to be left with jagged edges like I was, and I had to kind of go off camera and sand them down by hand, which is not fun. So save yourself the trouble and grab a good pair of tin snips. But you see me here just kind of framing out where I'm wanting it before I go ahead and make the cuts, and that way I know where I'm going to be cutting it off of, and I'm not trying to cut it while it's already on the case. So definitely measure things out before you decide to cut, and then after that you can kind of take the time to bend it around the shape of the actual case. If you find yourself having a hard time getting the brass strips to fit the curvature of that rounded corner of the case, I would definitely recommend doing what I'm doing here and moving it off to the side in the air and putting an actual physical bend in the metal yourself, so that way it follows that curve, because it is a metal and it has a natural tendency to want to stay in the shape that it was rolled in, and so you're going to have to actually work the material to deform it to actually fit the case. And definitely make sure you do this step before you actually remove the adhesive backing. So one, you're not getting your fingers all sticky, and two, you're not degrading the stickiness of the actual adhesive on the back. Something else I wanted to mention is that while you are getting to see the customization of the case in this video, I did forget to press record whenever I did the graphics card customization. So like an idiot, I had everything set up, had the camera and the tripod and everything like that, but just forgot to push the record button. So I said in the last video that I would do better about including the customization stuff and better at recording things.
You agreed to be better. I lied.
And I messed up on that. So that's my bad. I'll continue to work on that. But yeah, you can scold me in the comments. And this was about the time that I realized that the USB 3.0 header on the motherboard is facing directly at the fans of the AIO. So, needless to say, this stock cable that comes with the case was not able to plug in. There was not enough clearance there. And so, you can either get a extension cable like I did, which the link to that's down in the description, or if you use a different motherboard that has the USB 3.0 header on the bottom edge of the motherboard instead of the right side, it should be a non-issue. But it was definitely an annoyance, but it is what it is. We move on. Even though the build was technically physically done here, I had a couple complaints with it whenever I was looking at it. Number one was the area above the motherboard was kind of just bare, and also the cutouts don't have any grommets, so you could clearly see all the cables, and it just didn't look that premium like what I was looking for the entirety of the build. And secondly, the area down at the bottom of the case was definitely spatially dense there because the graphics card is so huge. So in order to knock out both of these problems, I used my newly acquired 3D printer to print a part for the top there. So I hopped into SolidWorks and 3D modeled a part using the dimensions that I'd taken from the build, and I went ahead and printed it out, but I had to print it in two separate pieces because my print bed wasn't big enough. And obviously that presents a problem in that I would have to join the parts together with some super glue, and then I would have to use automotive primer filler to cover up the joint as well as all the layer lines. And then I thought to myself, well, I can skip all of this by just adding some white vinyl over everything. It's going to cover up the layer lines, and it's actually going to join the parts together. And especially because these aren't like structural parts in any means, I didn't need them to have like a super strong joint. And so I went ahead and hopped into SolidWorks again, took some screenshots directly from my model and put them in Cricut software, which again, like I mentioned, those are down below the files for that, and just cut them out. And it was pretty simple. The only problem that I ran into when I was actually putting them on is you can kind of see here, I'm getting like little wrinkles and micro bubbles and stuff like that. And that's due to the way that I printed the part. I forgot to add support for all of the little three lines that are sticking out away from the side of the part. And so the first couple of layers of that had some stringiness to them, and it was catching on the actual vinyl sticker themselves. And so it kind of made it wonky. But if you are replicating this and you have a 3D printer, just make sure you print with supports and you'll be fine. Now, if you don't have a 3D printer, don't let comparison be the thief of joy here. It still looks awesome even without it. I just wanted to go that extra mile, and a 3D printer is something that I've been looking at for a very long time. I also have school training on how to model in 3D software. That was part of my mechanical engineering technology degree, and so it was just easy for me to pick up. But you can totally do something like this with wood or any other like easy material, maybe sheet metal or something like that if you wanted to, and not have to have very expensive tools in order to do it. Or you could even just leave it blank and it's still going to look great. But it's just something that I wanted to add into there to really round out the whole build for my specific vision for it. This has been something that I've been cooking up for months and really just been kind of mulling over. And so I was going to go that extra little bit to make it look that way. If you're making this for a flip build or anything like that, it might not be worth it for you to put in the time and effort to actually do this. It really just depends on the budget of the build, and I'll let you be the judge of that as to whether it's actually worth putting in that time or not. But if you're doing it for a personal build, it might be worth the little extra time that it takes to make one of these, whether it's through 3D printing or, like I mentioned before, making it with wood or some kind of sheet metal or something like that. But I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody was feeling pressured like they had to do this in order to achieve the same level of quality. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to encourage people to gain new skills and gain knowledge, especially if you're someone who is flipping PCs. Taking that little bit of extra time to learn a new skill and invest in yourself can definitely pay off, and you can see higher profits because your builds stand out. And creative problem solving is a really good skill to learn. It's something that I got a lot of exposure to with my background in engineering, and it's something that I kind of have a leg up with having been trained in that. But you can learn it without having to go to school to become an engineer. Building PCs is a perfect way to gain that skill because no build's going to go perfectly. There's always going to be some kind of small thing that goes wrong. You maybe put a part in the wrong order, or you ordered the wrong part and it's incompatible, whatever the case may be. It's an opportunity to learn, and the better you get at problem solving, the quicker you can get those problems actually solved, and the more likely you are to actually be able to think outside of the box and come up with cool things that not only serve a functional purpose but are aesthetic as well, like the piece that I created in this top part of the case, for example. So I just wanted to encourage people to invest in themselves. It's a great idea to always be looking for ways to gain knowledge. And if you're in here watching these kinds of videos, you're already the kind of person who is looking for that. So just keep doing what you're doing, and don't be afraid to take a step back every once in a while to give yourself time to think, but also persevere. Take the time to research. Look about what other options might be out there, and just continue to grow those skills. But I wanted to encourage everyone that's watching this to continue to do that. And here's the before and after. And I'm really satisfied with the way that this came out. It wasn't perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than it was. And I'm just really happy with the way that the build came out as a whole. I definitely think this is one of my top builds that I've ever done, one of my favorites for sure. And now we'll just get on to the B roll and close out the video. Thank you guys for watching.